They left me for dead in that twisted metal. My ex-husband married his mistress before my hospital bed went cold. But when the lawyers read his will 3 months later, her champagne shattered on marble floors. 25 billion reasons why karma doesn't forget. This is how I buried them all. Before I tell you how I became one of the richest women in America, do me a favor, hit that like button right now, because what you're about to hear will restore your faith in justice. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end. My name is Dr. Naomi Blake, and 8 years ago, I married a man who built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. Gregory Whitmore wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful, connected, the kind of man who had senators on speed dial. When we met, I was finishing my residency in cardiovascular surgery, working 100-hour weeks, surviving on coffee, and pure determination. He walked into that hospital after a minor procedure, saw me suturing a patient with steady hands, and told me later he knew right then I was different, special, the one. For 8 years, I believed him. I turned down chief of surgery at Mayo Clinic because he needed me in New York while he expanded into European markets. I attended galas in couture gowns when I wanted to be in scrubs. I smiled through business dinners where men twice my age questioned whether I was his date or his doctor, never believing I could be both his wife and a surgeon. Gregory would squeeze my hand under the table during those moments, and I thought that meant something. I thought we were a team. The cracks started small, late nights that turned into missed dinners, business trips that extended without explanation. The way his phone screen went dark whenever I entered the room. I'm a surgeon. I'm trained to notice details, to see what others miss. But when you love someone, you become an expert at lying to yourself. You explain away the evidence. You make excuses for the inexcusable. Her name was Cassandra Lee, 28 years old. Blonde, beautiful in that effortless way that comes from never having to prove yourself. She was his executive assistant, which is the oldest cliché in the book, isn't it? I found the hotel receipts while packing for what was supposed to be our anniversary trip to Santorini. The Waldorf Astoria, charged to his personal card, not the business account. 2 rooms booked, his and hers. When I confronted him, he didn't even have the decency to lie. He just looked at me with these tired eyes and said, "You're married to your career, Naomi." Cassandra makes me feel alive, as if my dedication to saving lives was somehow a character flaw, as if the career he once admired was now the reason he betrayed me. I filed for divorce the next week. His lawyers descended like vultures, turning our marriage into a transaction. Our love into line items on a balance sheet. They offered me $2 million. $2 million from a man worth $30 billion. His lad attorney actually said to me, "Take it or spend the next 5 years in court. Your choice, Dr. Blake." The way he said my title, like it was an insult, like I should be grateful for the scraps. I was drowning in paperwork and heartbreak when the accident happened. It was a Tuesday night, or maybe Wednesday morning. Time blurs when you've been operating for 18 hours straight. A 12-year-old girl had come in with a congenital heart defect, her parents holding each other in the waiting room, praying to a God they'd stopped believing in. I gave them their daughter back, alive, her heart beating strong under my stitches. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. The rain was coming down in sheets when I got on the highway. Midnight, maybe later. I remember thinking about how Gregory used to wait up for me after long surgeries, how he'd have soup heating on the stove, even though he couldn't cook to save his life. I was so lost in memories of who we used to be that I almost didn't see the truck. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. 70 miles per hour, head-on collision. They told me later that my car wrapped around the guardrail like aluminum foil. The jaws of life took 40 minutes to cut me out. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the sirens, or the helicopter, or the trauma team that worked on me for 11 hours. I remember rain, and headlights, and then nothing. I woke up 11 days later in ICU. My mother was sitting beside my bed, and the first thing I noticed was how much older she looked. like she'd aged years and days. My pelvis was shattered. My lung had collapsed. The head trauma was severe enough that they weren't sure I'd ever practice surgery again. The doctor, a colleague I'd worked with for years, couldn't meet my eyes when he told me how close I'd come to dying. 3% chance of survival, he said. 3%. Gregory never called. Not once. My mother told me in a whisper, like she was afraid the words themselves would hurt me worse than my injuries. He sent flowers once, expensive ones, the kind you send it to a business associate. No card, no message, nothing. I was 2 weeks into rehabilitation, learning to walk again with a physical therapist who kept saying, "You're doing great," in that patronizing tone people use with children when a nurse made a mistake. She was checking my vitals, scrolling on her phone, and she gasped. She tried to hide it, but I saw the screen. The tabloid headline, "Pharmaceutical King Gregory Whitmore marries in lavish ceremony." He'd married Cassandra 6 weeks after my accident. 6 weeks. I was still learning to breathe without a tube down my throat, and he was exchanging vows. The photos showed everything. Her in a couture gown that probably cost more than most people's houses. Him beaming like a man who'd won the lottery. It was the same venue where we'd planned our 10th anniversary vow renewal. Same flowers, same strings quartet. He'd just swapped out the bride. The quote from Gregory that accompanied the photos is burned into my memory. Sometimes tragedy reminds us to embrace happiness. As if my near death was just background noise to his love story. As if I was just an inconvenient chapter in his biography. I vomited right there in my hospital bed. The nurse thought it was the pain medication. It wasn't. 2 months into my recovery, the news broke like a thunderclap. Gregory's private jet had crashed in the Alps. He and Cassandra were returning from their honeymoon, flying over mountains older than any of our problems, when something went wrong. They never even had time to radio for help. Both declared dead at the scene. I cried when I heard. Not for him, not for the man who'd abandoned me in a hospital bed, but for the man I thought I'd married. For the ghost of our early days, when he'd bring coffee to the hospital at 3 a.m. just to see me for 5 minutes. For the future we'd planned, the children we'd never have, the life that died long before he did. His mother called me the day after the funeral. Her voice was broken glass. "You were the only one who truly loved him, Naomi. The only one who saw him as a man, not a bank account." I didn't know what to say to that. What do you say to the mother of a man who broke your heart? 3 weeks later, a lawyer arrived at my rehabilitation center. Winston Crawford, senior partner at Crawford, Whitmore, and Associates. Yes, that Whitmore. Gregory's grandfather had founded the firm. Winston was 70, if he was a day, with silver hair and eyes that had seen everything and judged nothing. "Mrs. Blake," he said, and then paused. "Or do you prefer Dr. Blake? Either is fine," I said, confused about why Gregory's estate attorney was visiting me. He sat down in the uncomfortable visitor's chair and opened a leather portfolio. "Dr. Blake, I need to inform you of something crucial. Your divorce from Gregory Whitmore was never finalized." The room tilted. "What?" "The paperwork was filed. Negotiations were ongoing, but nothing was signed. Legally speaking, you remained his wife, his only legitimate spouse." He paused, letting that sink in. "Which means Cassandra's marriage to him was not legally valid." I couldn't breathe. After all that grief, all that pain, all those months of feeling erased from his life, I was still his wife when he died. The will reading took place in a conference room that screamed money. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Furniture that cost more than my medical school debt. Art on the walls that belonged in museums. Cassandra's family was there. Her mother in head-to-toe Chanel morning wear. Her 2 brothers in suits that fit too well to be rentals. All of them looking at me like I was something they'd scraped off their shoes. Gregory's mother sat beside me and squeezed my hand. She knew what he was coming. Winston had told her first. Winston opened the leather portfolio and began to read. The will was dated 2 weeks before the crash, before Gregory died, but after he'd married Cassandra. My hands started shaking. Gregory's mother's grip tightened. To my wife, Dr. Naomi Blake, Winston read, his voice steady and clear. I leave the entirety of my estate, including all properties, businesses, investments, and assets, after charitable donations, as specified in Appendix Sub C. Total estimated value, $25.3 billion. Cassandra's mother shady a sound like a dying animal. Her brother shot to his feet. This is impossible. She's his ex-wife. She gets nothing. Winston didn't even blink. The divorce was never finalized. Ms. Lee's marriage to Mr. Whitmore was not legally valid. Dr. Blake is the sole legitimate heir. The other brother threw his coffee cup. It shattered against the wall, espresso dripping down like blood. Cassandra's sister, I hadn't even noticed her until she screamed, let out this primal shriek. That bitch killed them. She caused this. She cursed them. Security had to escort them out. Their threats echoed down the marble hallways long after they disappeared. I just sat there, numb, while Gregory's mother cried into my shoulder, and Winston explained what came next. They attacked me with everything they had. Lawsuits claiming fraud, undue influence, manipulation. The tabloids had a field day. Black Widow headlines. Photos of me leaving the hospital in a wheelchair, with captions questioning how a nearly dead ex-wife could possibly inherit billions. Social media put me on trial, half calling me lucky, half calling me a witch who'd somehow caused that plane crash through sheer spite. Death threats arrived at my hospital room. Letters describing in detail how I should die, how I'd stolen what belonged to Cassandra, how I was a gold digger who'd probably sabotaged Gregory's plane myself. Private investigators followed my mother to the grocery store. Someone threw a brick through her car window. But Winston's team was thorough. They uncovered everything. And I mean everything. Gregory had discovered, 1 week before the crash, that Cassandra was pregnant. He'd ordered a paternity test because something felt wrong. The results came back 3 days before he died. The baby wasn't his. It was his former CFO's child. The same CFO he'd trusted for 15 years. The one he'd confided in about everything. There was more. Private detective reports showed Cassandra had been planning this from the beginning, getting close to Gregory, isolating him from people who truly cared about him, pushing for a quick marriage. She'd even hired a lawyer to explore contesting his existing will before they'd even gotten engaged. Gregory had called Winston the morning before the crash. Winston played me the voicemail, and hearing Gregory's voice again nearly broke me. Win, I made a terrible mistake, the biggest of my life. I need to fix this. I need to make things right with Naomi. She was the only real thing I ever had. He'd been planning to annul the marriage. He'd been planning to call me. And then the plane went down, and all his plans died with him. I made my decision in that hospital room, still learning to walk without a cane, still waking up from nightmares about twisted metal and rain. I established the Blake Whitmore Medical Foundation with $15 billion, free cardiac care for underserved communities, full-ride medical scholarships for minority students who wanted to become surgeons but couldn't afford the path I'd barely survived, research grants for young doctors who had more talent than funding. I kept $8 billion. Enough for my mother to retire, enough for generational wealth, enough to never worry about money again. I gave $2.3 billion to Gregory's mother and the legitimate charities he'd supported for years. The lawsuits against me collapsed like houses of cards. Winston's evidence was ironclad, and then the counterattack began. Investigators discovered that Cassandra had forged documents, that her family had been planning to contest the will even before Gregory died. Fraud charges were filed. Her mother and brothers spent everything they had on legal fees, trying to escape prosecution. The last I heard, Cassandra was working retail at a mall in New Jersey. The CFO who fathered her child wanted nothing to do with her. Her family lost their house. The brothers filed for bankruptcy. Karma didn't just catch up, it ran them over and backed up to make sure. It's been 3 years since that conference room, since that scream that echoed through marble halls. I finished rehabilitation. I walk with a slight limp now, my battle scar, my reminder that I survived when I shouldn't have. I returned to surgery part-time because my hands still remember how to save lives, and that's a gift I refuse to waste. The foundation has opened 47 clinics in 3 years. We've provided free cardiac care to over 30,000 patients. 1,200 students are on full scholarships, learning to hold hearts in their hands, learning that medicine is a calling, not just a career. Gregory's mother and I have Sunday dinners every week, and she tells me stories about him as a boy. Before wealth and power changed him into someone neither of us recognized. I didn't cause that crash. I didn't write that will. But I honored his legacy better than anyone who married him for money ever could have. Karma isn't revenge. It's truth catching up at its own pace. They wanted his empire. I built something that saves lives. My survival wasn't luck. It was purpose waiting to be fulfilled. Sometimes the universe breaks you down to build you back stronger. They tried to erase me from Gregory's story. Instead, I became the one who gave his life meaning after death. And every life my foundation saves, every student who graduates medical school debt-free, every family who doesn't have to choose between cardiac surgery and bankruptcy. That's me getting the last word. That's karma, written in sutures and saved heartbeats. If this story proved that karma is real, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel because I share true stories of justice every single week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Comment below. Do you believe everything happens for a reason? Share this video with someone who needs to believe that good things come to those who endure. Remember, your darkest hour might just be dawn's first light. Thanks for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.